Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hello, I'm Nick.
I'm Valerie.
I'm Sara.
And I'm Josh. We are finally in 2022. I wanted to welcome Nick and Sara back to the panel. And for the very first time, we have a friend of mine from high school. You may recognize her from the field trip that we took to the book garden back in 2019. Valerie, it is very nice to have you on the panel.
Nope, it's an honor.
We're very happy to have you here. One of the major and magical things that Zoom has been able to do is connect us with all kinds of people. And we've had people that we generally would not have been able to have on the show before. And it's very easy to use, too. Today, we are going to be discussing a Sylvia Plath poem. That is one of her earlier poems in Mad Girl's Love Song, which was first published in Mademoiselle magazine in 1953. It was published along with articles that were written about her and articles that she herself wrote. Nick, you have a discussion starter?
Actually, since I'm just learning that it was in the collection about her and she actually wrote things about herself, it kind of sparked it. Seems like from the words in the poem that there's a lot of mental illness in the writing. I feel that writing is a very big thing when it comes to not being able to express yourself properly. I guess the discussion would be, do you believe that writing and just getting whatever's going on in your head out, even if it's just mumbo jumbo, do you think that's actually better than just leaving it in? Expressing your feelings in whatever way is possible and healthy.
I agree that I think that being able to express your feelings in any possible way, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, is far better than bottling it up, because that in turn will cause you to feel a sense of self-abuse. As far as Sylvia Plath is concerned, I think that she really, just about her entire life and her entire writing career, wrote in order to, for the most part, convey these emotions of hers. This one didn't get published in either the Colossus or Ariel. Colossus came first. The Bell Jar, which is her only novel, was semi-autobiographical. And then you have Ariel, which was her last. That pretty much is the conveying of her emotional state.
When I did see this poem in the list, being a musician, I saw the word song, and of course I was like, I want to see what this is like. I told Josh before the discussion that the PDF that I found of it actually came with sheet music as well. Just reading over the poem, I can relate to it because I do have trouble expressing my feelings. Of course, right when I start writing, just words flow out of me like it's nothing. And it just feels good that being able to put it on paper is something that could help somebody else as well.
Yeah, that was also around an era where music had a heavy influence on the writers and their works. The Beats era was heavily influenced by jazz.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting.
And Sylvia Plath was more so classified in the class of confessional poets as opposed to the Beats poets and the Beats writers. However, both were relatively running around the same time, which was the 1950s into the 60s.
Yeah, so I absolutely think that writing is a great way to express feelings and totally not a good thing to bottle them up. Everyone has a different way or format of finding a way to express themselves just so they're not bottling up emotions. You know, we have poets and writers. I'm more visual, so a lot of times I have trouble finding words for things. So I draw pictures and I do stuff visually like that, not as verbal. With writing too, and how Plath, she writes more confessional work. When you're writing, it's very personal and it's a very safe space for yourself. You don't have to fear judgment when you're just writing on your own, journaling, doing anything like that. And like you said, Nick, in the end, it could end up helping people or someone else if they do read it. So I feel like you need that like safe, comfortable space to write, knowing no one will most likely see it. But I feel like in the long run, writing really helps anyone, and especially when it's coming from a very like personal and emotional place. I feel like anyone can relate.
Well, I don't really write a lot. When I do, I have a journal that I write my thoughts in. I could just let it out.
That's still a
And
form
it really
of,
helps.
yeah, it's still a form of helpful writing. You've seen Sylvia Plath had either her diaries or her journals or her letters. They've been published as documentation. There are some people that just want to keep it to themselves, and that's perfectly okay. Once you obtain a state of fame, though, Sylvia Plath, the fact that the intense poetry of hers was released after her suicide in 1963, that really became a documentation for people of her condition. Yeah, it became more of a psychological study.
I know Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park. He also died the same way Sylvia Plath did, suicide. And a lot of the lyrics had expressed his feelings and what he was going through. So I can sort of relate that.
I do know that like a lot of writers, not just musical, but like even Edgar Allan Poe, he suffered mentally as well. It will show with writers, artists, musicians, any form of art, it shows in their work, and that's why people are so drawn to it.
Yeah, it especially would show in Sylvia Plath's work. Sometimes I felt that it got a little bit too extreme, where she made references to feeling like a Jewish person having pain inflicted to them by the Nazis, which I didn't necessarily like that approach.
I guess I should take offense to that one.
I think that was her way of describing how she felt. I don't think you can make that comparison unless you've been in that kind of situation, and by no means was she in that kind of situation. Let's get into the poem itself. What in the poem itself stuck out to you?
I'm actually looking at it right now. It jumps around a lot. The first like little stanza mentioned like is talking about kind of like wanting to escape and like just close your eyes and wanting to escape. From there, like the second stanza kind of sounds like she's going into like a dreamland or dream state of some kind with the stars waltzing around. But then it does at the end come back to just realizing like, hey, like I'm gonna have to open my eyes eventually. Like even though I'm escaping to a dream world, reality's still here.
There are two lines that dictate the entire poem. First is the "I shut my eyes and all the world drops dead."
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, in parentheses, "I think I made you up inside my head." "I shut my eyes and the world drops dead" is an escape from the terror that's taking place within the real world. Whether or not where that terror is coming from, I think the reason that she said in parentheses that "I think I made you up inside my head" is that sense of subconscious realization that a lot of this is an interior battle in an exterior world.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a whole bunch of escape in the poem. And it's definitely like how you interpret it. But I even feel like if you have like a first love or just even like someone you've lost and like can't accept that they're gone, sometimes it almost feels like in your mind you kind of force yourself to forget about them. And they're such an important part of your life for like a very long time. And it's just so painful to lose them or let them go that you kind of block them out of your head. But it sounds like in the poem, this person might not have existed in the first place. It's someone she made up totally in her head as an escape from the actual world, like when she opens her eye.
That's a reasonable argument, and I think that happens. The whole idea that "I think I made you up inside my head" could be applied to quite a few things, but a lot of them were the events that took place between her interaction with the partner figure and how this partner figure had left her, as well as the last one referring to the Thunderbird. She's been known for using mythological figures in her poetry.
What I did like when Josh, you mentioned that "I think I made you up inside my head" is kind of like that imagery of understanding like, all right, even though I'm escaping, I have to realize like this is all an internal battle. And it mentions that line 4 times. It looks like, yeah, 4 times.
And in parentheses too.
Yeah, which is kind of usually when I write, if I write in parentheses, it's kind of like a note to myself. In my eyes, it's kind of like her constantly telling herself, like, this is an inner battle I have to deal with.
But at the same time, there's other people that are, exceptions can be made in this case, where if the reader has gone through a similar interior battle, none of them will be the same exact ones. It's like comparing fingerprints. In this poem in particular, the speaker is
grieving
and speaking of her own interior battle and admitting that it is an interior battle. She still is needs to come to terms with the fact that she's living in a world of exterior thinking or exterior diction, because there is a sense of interior thinking among the exterior too. Were there any lines that stuck out to people that they liked?
The stars go out waltzing out in blue and red, and arbitrary blackness gallops in. That reminds me of the feeling when you have really strong hope of something or a promise of a future or a future with someone, and everything is so delightful and colorful, and then it all comes crashing down eventually afterwards, or if something goes wrong. And it kind of goes into themes of abandonment a little bit, where it says, I dreamed that you bewitched me into bed. And yeah, that a lot of times we have really high hopes or expectations for something, and we're so positive that it's going to happen or it's going to be this certain way. And then, like she says, the blackness gallops in. It's not what we thought it was. It's not true, and it's not real, or it's not happening. Yeah, and I also find it really interesting that she said, I dreamed that you bewitched me into bed.
The way that things were written were just so lyrical and, in a way, beautiful in its writing style. The way that she used various description was just quite amazing. And I like that line, the stars go waltzing out in blue and red, and arbitrary blackness gallops in, describing the night, which is a closer freeway to that escape.
I did like the line, I fancied your return the way you said, but I grow old and I forget your name. So, like, for me, it kind of shows that she had hope of a return, or had hope of some kind of resolution. Of course, time takes time. That hope is slowly dwindling off. Just those 2 lines just show the battle of, like, negative and positive that your mind can do.
Yeah, your mind is a wonderful thing.
Sarcasm, yes.
Depends on how you're using your mind, because the mind can do amazing things, but yet it is a gateway without boundaries.
It's a gigantic computer, but it's also the biggest bully.
Yeah, it's like the internet without its restrictions.
Pretty much.
with the underbelly and all. I'm glad that I came across this poem, because I own the Colossus and Ariel, and it was not in either one. And right around this time, she had a suicide attempt through swallowing of sleeping pills. This required that she be hospitalized. They had to use electroshock therapy to get her back on track.
Now that you say that, well, that kind of also connects to a bit with like electroshock therapy. It's almost like, from what I understand, when it was used, it was kind of treated for someone with depression. It's almost a reset to the brain, so you don't remember things as well. So it's almost like you don't have all those bad memories or things that are causing you the depression. So that kind of connects to the poem a lot, because she's forgetting things, and to remember is some sort of either person or entity or feeling that was once there, but she doesn't have a name for it anymore, whether it was a person or if it was in her mind.
It's quite something, because this poem was written and released before that incident took place. Probably had knowledge on process of electroshock therapy, because back then mental distress and mental mishap was treated through that, and on the extremity with lobotomies. There was a great deal of misunderstanding.
I mean, this poem
didn't live during the 50s.
Oh yeah. Like, this poem could actually, like, not only just either depression or grieving, but it can pretty much touches base with almost like every mental illness that's out there today. When it's saying, like, I think I made you up inside my head, like, that could be schizophrenia as well. Honestly, like if I actually had people in my life that dealt with mental illness and are into literature, I would show them this poem because it would just explain so much, and it would basically like let them know like, hey, people know what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much stigma with mental illness. Like it's so much worse in the 50s. And even the title Mad Girls Love Song, a lot of people with mental illness they sometimes feel about themselves and are viewed because of the media and society that they're crazy or mad or hysterical when no, it's mental illness. It isn't that.
The understanding back then was much lesser than it is now. I think we have a greater deal of awareness and research. Yeah, everything was clumped together. In this case, it was between the schizophrenia, the bipolar disorder. Back then, it was manic depression. As far as getting her message across is concerned, I think it's one of her stronger poems. I like the fact that she's self-aware, but I am happy that she's not pulling certain groups of people down like she has before. I think that she does a lot with a little. In a way, I was looking for more, but I do like the way that she set the backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, when people write about mental illness or talk about it, it's kind of hard because you don't want to trigger somebody that might be suffering that with the words that she chose to use. For me, it wasn't triggering. Like, also, everybody's different.
It was very well written.
Another line that I really liked was the kiss me quite insane. Because, like, a kiss is something that's, like, supposed to be passionate and boost, like, happiness. Like you're supposed to feel good when somebody gives you a kiss, but then describing it as quite insane is just like saying, "Oh yeah, even though it's nice, I don't want that."
I mean, people approach happiness differently. There's also that sense of irrational thinking.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It probably tied into the irrational part of it as well, with like the bordering between internal and external, what was like actually happening.
Alrighty then. Do we have any final thoughts?
I actually do want to find the sheet music again and see like what it actually sounds like as a song.
That would be something. I would be inclined to hear a lyrical backdrop to this particular poem because there are a few poems that take that. It would be interesting just to have a musical accompaniment to Sylvia Plath's poetry because I would imagine it has some kind of intensity to it or some kind of at least potential energy. I remember A Streetcar Named Desire, Tennessee Williams play, had a lyrical accompaniment for when it was being performed. It was pretty haunting, especially the way that they were building up climax and also depicting sexual interaction, be it voluntary or involuntary.
Streetcar Named Desire did that really, really well. And I feel like when a writer, an artist has that in mind, that they're writing something and they intend for it to be a song or another form of art, I agree with you, Josh. I would definitely love to hear it in like a lyrical, like song form.
I think an instrumental is a good response because I remember hearing Paul Simon wrote a song about Richard Cory. I didn't really think it was that good. It was very stiff. And the same thing, Metallica did something for Whom the Bell Tolls. I have not read For Whom the Bell Tolls yet. I would need to compare notes, but it still felt a little bit stiff.
I mean, it could be interpreted as a heavy metal.
They're going to interpret it their own way. They also had that musical number too, their heavy metal number, which is, I believe, from what a friend of mine said, it's common that they do that, where they had something that they play their instruments before they get to the song itself, or
like an intro or something like that. I know a lot of metal bands, they even have like acoustic versions where the acoustic version sounds like a ballad, but then when they play it electric, it's like you can't understand them because they're screaming so loud.
Unless you're reading the poem itself as the lyrics, or if it's just the background that's meant to be listened to while you read it, I think would be.
I'm looking at the sheet music now, and there's a soprano and an alto section. It's more of like an echo. So it's like, I shut my eyes, and then that's when the next one comes in. It's like, I shut my eyes, and it kind of like, it's it's an echo type effect.
It makes it more stream of consciousness then, because Leonard Cohen, his writing has been translated into music. You've heard the song Hallelujah? Originally a Leonard Cohen poem, and Leonard Cohen was the original one to sing it. He really didn't sing; he just spoke, kind of like Charlie Daniels and Jimmy Dean, those kind of people. I think there's still meaning to that song. The poem itself, the poem is the lyrics, and I think it's better that way.
Oh, most definitely.
But yeah, and I've had Charlie do a musical response to drum taps.
I mean, if you're interested, I can see what I can do with the music composure and stuff. I mean, I got guitars, ukuleles, and a bass, so I can figure something out.
Oh, okay. Do you know what kind of instruments they use to perform this?
I did see the name of the composer, but it didn't mention any type of instruments. But from the sound of the words and stuff, I think violin would probably be the best for it. But of course, I don't play violin.
We'll have to find somebody that can. If you could play piano and you needed a piano, we'll have to find somebody who has that too. I have my hands on pianos and organs and keyboards. That's something, yeah, that'd take a lot of thought. Worth the response.
But it was definitely a good read, and especially for where I'm at in my life right now, like seeing how it was portrayed and just understanding that other people, I'm not the only one. It was a good read for where I'm at in my life.
Well, did everybody got this from online? I got it from a site called neuroticpoets.com. That was the first thing that I came across, and they have a list of writers that they define as neurotic. They have Edgar Allan Poe, Lord Byron, one of the Shelleys. I think it was Percy Shelley, Dylan Thomas.
So a lot of like goth-like poetry.
You could say pioneer. I don't know if that's the way they saw themselves.
Yeah, I mean, for its time back in like when they were writing, that was just the style back then.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, it's considered, I guess, the goth or the emo type writing. That was just their style back then.
It wasn't intended. It's just how it came out at the time. That's probably why it feels like it's a style now, looking back at it.
Very dark, which...
I think there is poetry that's very dark, and I think that it really opens us into it gives us that different perspective. I think that perspective and being able to achieve diversity, there's so much to do and so much to look at.
Especially nowadays.
Yes. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading. Thank you.